Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News.
On the 14th of August 2018, Acting President Yemi Osibanjo directed the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, to dismantle the Nigerian Police Force Special Anti-Robbery Squad, citing persistent complaints and reports on the activities of the SARS that border on allegations of human rights violations. He ordered the Inspector General of Police to overhaul the management and activities of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad and ensure that any unit that will emerge from the process will be intelligence-driven and restricted to the prevention and detection of armed robbery and kidnapping. In swift compliance with the presidential directive, Inspector General of Police Ibrahim Idris ordered the immediate overhaul of SARS across the country. This development, however, couldn't have been possible without Nigerians rallying on social media to constantly push the hashtag EndSars across all platforms. And one person who has been in the forefront of it all is civil rights and institutional reforms advocate Segun Awosanya, who is a brand consultant and a realtor as well. Welcome to the morning show.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Segun, good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, should I say congratulations?
Yes.
Because you didn't have to mobilize Nigerians to go onto the streets, carry placards or, dance around. Your strategy was to use the social media.
Yes, we must commend.
Twitter particularly, with your Twitter handle at SegaLink.
Yes, sir.
Now, this is about the digital age, isn't it? Why did you choose that strategy?
Well, there are multiple strategies involved in running this, but social media deployment was actually to galvanize the people effectively, because a lot of youth involved in using social media on a daily basis, because most of them are not employed, most of them have time on their hands, and most of them are predominantly the victims of this police brutality.
Correct.
From our research, we realized that we have over 80% of people affected being between the ages of 16 to 35. Because if you're old, if you're above 40 or so, they are not going to harass you readily unless you have a police case. So we engage them based on the fact that there has not been enough reports, from police brutality. Because when a policeman robs you or matches you to the ATM machine to take money from your account, you're not going to run back to the police station to report, because you're going to internalize that and feel or normalize it in fear, thinking that they can always come back for you. But there have been many reports, many unreported cases until we decided to raise that awareness and tell people, you now have a place to come to. We will fight for you. We will get you lawyers, and we'll push this to a logical conclusion. So that now started a trend, of people risking their lives to record, to have evidence, to record, to take pictures, to record videos, and also to come on Twitter to report those people. And once that is done, we'll pick it up instantly and we'll push further to ensure that they get justice.
And you also have the other hashtag, reform policing.
Yes, there are two ends of this. Then the first one is the EndSars, which is an objective.
Correct.
And the second is the reform police NG, which is the end goal. That is where we are now, because with governments, the police structure, they've now realized, they've now admitted the fact that the police had gone amok, and they've been operating outside the law. And because you cannot have a civilization without law and order. You cannot have law and order without having law enforcement. You cannot have law enforcers who are divorced from the law.
Okay.
So that's exactly what we have been able to push. That's exactly what they've been able to admit. And we're moving on to ensure that the order is implemented to the letter.
Okay. Well, I mean, you targeted just one division of the police, Special Anti-Robbery Squad. But other policemen in other units, I would say, are just as guilty as the SARS team.
Actually, we didn't target the SARS operative alone. It's because Reform Police NG actually covers the entire police system. The SARS operatives are actually a reflection of the problems of the entire police system itself. Running down from the recruitment process, from their welfare, from the dereliction over the years, from the fact that police in itself, from inception, was created to protect the colonialists.
Yes.
And when they handed it over to our politicians, they didn't really change much.
It was called the constabulary police.
Yes, and the military interregnum did not actually help us. Police became a force, you know, under our own government. And based on that, they deteriorated over the years. So if we're going to reform the police, it's not something we do within 48 hours or 24 hours. It's a continuous process of monitoring. And it will take a generation. It can take 10 to 20 years before we begin to see the kind of policing we'll be proud of, our youth will be willing to take selfies with.
Okay.
In response to your advocacy, the federal government has taken 2 quick steps.
Yes, sir.
The Inspector General of Police announced what you call the EndSars, which is a reform SARS, more or less, in his view. And then he announced that, you know, there will be a chief superintendent of police in charge of SARS in various places. Now, beyond that, the government has also said the National Economic Council has decided that the police will be decentralized.
Yes.
This decentralization that they talk about, is that really the reform you are looking at?
Right.
No, precisely what we are seeing now is a reaction to the things that we have been making demands of and what have you, the things we've been saying. But precisely, we are still going to get to a point where we begin to check the boxes of the things that they're doing. What we have now is just a political, we have a pronouncement,
yes,
and we have a political reaction to
right,
show that they are actually complying with what the acting president has said. Because this to us is like moving furniture around, you know, because it's not much of a reform. Changing of names and what have you, that's not what we advocated for
what
1 year.
steps would you like to see taken besides the reformation from the government?
Okay. First of all, you cannot talk about reformation without going into the roots of the matter. And what is the root of the matter? What law set up the police itself? We're looking at the Police Act first. You know, a 75-year-old law that is anachronistic in our current system cannot continue because we are no longer using a 10-year-old computer now. So why should we keep a law that is no longer reflecting society?
Okay.
So that's the first step. And second step also is to, you know, reconstitute the police council. You know, so there are various other things that we need to do because it's a matter of law, it's a matter of legislation. So it's not just about moving the same people around in the same office. It's about fixing the laws. It's about fixing the systems that control, because we don't really have a federal police. You understand? Not to talk of talking about state police or community police or what have you. What we have is a Nigerian police, you know, controlled by the president, controlled by the governors who take security votes, you know, controlled by the Police Service Commission, who are the people responsible for promotion, career advancement, discipline, and what have you. And precisely what exactly have they done, you know, over the years? So these are things that needs to be reviewed first. We look at enrollment, we look at welfare, we look at housing, we look at our police station itself, we look at there are so many things. But a step in the right direction is government admitting first that there is a problem, that they have failed with internal security, and that they are ready to make amends. With that, we can now begin to democratize the police structure, because we're in a democracy. We cannot have a militarized police.
Well, the Police Act is more or less a subsidiary legislation. Will you be also calling for constitutional amendment?
Definitely.
Particularly in the light of the provisions of sections 214 and 215 of the Constitution, which deal with some of the issues you raised?
Yes, sir. That is already in process, because as we speak, we have influenced the bill, the Police Act Reform Bill, which will necessitate the constitutional amendment. Because first of all, when we started this advocacy, we were engaging the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. And from the executive, the few gist we got was, look, there is a constitutional impediment here. And because of the state of the climb, the president will not go and talk to the National Assembly on this matter. Because you know how constitutional amendment goes, how the process goes in Nigeria. It's always very difficult, very tenuous. It takes a lot of time, and it costs a lot of money. You know, so based on that, and because of the strain between those two arms of government, that's not going to happen. So it was practically sent back to us that, look, go and sort out the constitutional impediment, and then come back to us and see if we will not sign. And that's exactly what we did. We went and put pressure, created a political will. That's what the groundswell of dissent cost. And when everybody started sending videos and started complaining and all, and we have a petition signed by 50,000 Nigerians
Very good,
and
yes,
all those
saw
things.
that.
So the political will was there, and people are willing to say, we are going to shut down the entire country, and then none of the politicians we see today will return. So, of course, that has threatened them, that they've seen what, that anarchy stares us all in the face. So based on that, they just had to do the needful.
What's your position on the idea of state police, which is something that was endorsed by the National Conference in 2014, and which the Vice President has also been championing along with other people?
In Nigeria, we like to say a lot of things, use a lot of terms that eventually loses meaning, like restructure, like reform. Somebody can move a chair around and tell you they've reformed something. And the same, when you say state police, there are two things. There's two schools of thought. Are you talking about state police where the state governors take charge of and control of the police? If that is the case, it's not going to happen.
Why
because
so?
it cannot happen unless you restructure Nigeria in its entirety, where states begin to control their own resources. But if you talk about state police in terms of community police ideology or social construct, where every citizen is responsible for policing, because ideally, it is not police that keeps criminals away from our street. It is the society that says, not in my backyard. It is the society that says, we don't want this in our society. And because we trust the authorities, when we catch a criminal, we will send them to the authorities to take justice from there. But because we don't trust the authorities, what we have is jungle justice. What we have is distrust. And that line of trust that has been broken, you cannot have a state police in that condition, because society will not accept the police, and police cannot begin to do anything without the cooperation of society. So it is the society that actually does it. So if you're looking at state policing or not, it is not a dialogue that can actually materialize without restructuring Nigeria in its entirety.
Well, beyond Twitter activism, did you at any point have cause to interface with senior government officials on this subject of police reform?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. When we started our research, before the campaign actually started, the entire process and what we're about to do, what the problem, the statement of problem, what was discussed with the Senate President, was discussed with the Speaker of the House of Assembly. And then also the Ministry of Interior was aware of this, of this matter. And we went on to say, but again, they were looking at it and are telling us, they told us, look, this might be an isolated situation. Probably do your research properly. Let us get feedback from the people. Then we see how, the level of penetration. Then we can begin to now know what to do. Then when we did the research, we realized that the entire southern Nigeria and Federal Capital Territory was badly affected by this police brutality in imbroglio, especially from the south. This is not to say that the police are clean. Most of our police stations are criminal bases, hideouts and kidnappers' den. Because anybody walking on the street can be picked up by so-called task force and be asked to pay some sums of money, minimum of 60,000 naira. We have intervened. We have data on this. On a daily, on a week, every 45 minutes, people have an encounter, if not less.
Who is funding your advocacy?
Well, it's self-funded, because we know that we cannot, for something, an institution that has not been confronted for 75 years cannot be confronted using any of those means that can actually get your advocacy tarnished. So we cannot afford to use, to take money from politicians because they want control. By now, it will have been hijacked. We are experienced about how advocacy is run in Nigeria. Once it gets into opposition parties and what have you, everything gets muddled up. And we know we cannot also begin to engage crowd, to carry placards and what have you. They can always sponsor a counter-protest, which will lead into violence. At the end of the day, life will be lost, your narrative is gone. So we had to use the strategy based on research, based on understanding of Nigerians, based on understanding of authorities, based on understanding of the rule of law, then to carry out a strategic, a process of engaging government and carrying the citizenry along.
But police reform advocacy is not new in Nigeria. It's been an old struggle.
Yes.
With a lot of NGOs dedicated just to police reform.
Yes.
And many of these issues we have dealt with in many workshops and conferences.
Yes.
Now, what do you think is different now, in your own example, that you think will bring the positive outcome that you expect, beyond this political acknowledgement of protest from the public?
First of all, human beings don't protest. They don't rally or protest or advocate for justice. They advocate against injustice.
Yes.
People don't advocate or fight for surplus. They fight for scarcity, against scarcity. So most of, if you say, okay, we're advocating for police reforms and what have you, you only end up being an organization that is not recognized. Nobody is going to be moved because citizenry, the pulse on the streets will not connect to what you're talking about. These are people who have not seen credible leadership. These are people that have not, they don't know what leadership meant. These are children born in the military interregnum period, you know, so there is no how you can begin to win that argument or carry them along or get the kind of political will you need to actually get things done. But now that people have experienced what bad policing is, what police brutality is, what men that are meant to protect you and your property, being the robbers and being the kidnappers themselves, and they are seeing somebody painting a different picture of what it should be, automatically they will gravitate towards that kind of campaign, and they will ensure that they monitor such campaigns because they know their lives depends on it. Because again, the policy that we have, the common ground that we have been able to find is telling people, making them understand that what we're doing, we're not doing for ourselves. Because we're self-funded, we're not asking anybody for money, one. And two, we're doing what we're doing because of our children. Yes. Because we all have loved ones. And because we all have loved ones, we all have, some of us who have children, we're saying, look into the eyes of your children and then begin to answer their prayers through engagement that will bequeath to them a future that they deserve.
You spoke earlier about democratizing the police. You spoke passionately about that. But now what I hear from you is that this may not happen because if we don't have a state police to actually govern that whole thing, we're not going to see any change, correct? So what is your idea? Because I don't understand.
No, let me clear that. Let me clarify that. What I'm saying is this. Structurally, we cannot have a police in the hands of state governors right now. Okay. It is not going to work because they are still owing salaries of a lot of for the staffers and whatever it is that they have on the, in the current structure. You know, we need a structure that begins to put policing in the hands of councils and people who are civilians, not people within the system, not retired hands in former IGs or what have you. Ordinary Nigerians who understand what it takes, you know, to run, you know, like they say, the future of every sector is the private sector. So if you are going to democratize the police system itself, it must involve the people. That's why I gave the analogy that it is not the police that keeps the criminals away. It is not the amount of gun or firepower. It's amount of intelligence and cooperation with the people and society.
How do we involve the people if we don't trust the police? How do we involve them?
That is why we're building trust now. We're already involved now. The reform that is going on right now is involving the people. Because
one more question before you go. I mean, I see you spend an incredible amount of time on Twitter because I follow you. And you are not alone. There are other people who are just on Twitter almost 24 hours. Do you think we'll get to a stage in Nigeria very soon when we'll begin to worry about Twitter addiction?
Oh, yes.
Well, it depends on what you're using Twitter for. Twitter, since you're not addicted to your toothbrush, you use it every time. You use it in the morning, in the evening. You use, you know, it's a tool. Yes, it depends on what, you know, or if it is abused, abnormal use of something can begin to cause worry. But when you use it for something, right now, what we are doing with the advocacy, we're trying to focus the attention of our youth into making proper use of these platforms to create social change, to impact society. You know, it is not something you use to while away the time. It is something you use for a purpose, to achieve something that you see and you can be proud of. Okay, and that's exactly what we spent a great deal of time.
Segun, thank you very much for coming to the morning show.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have cause to invite you again.
Yes.
Because the police is a living subject, you know, in Nigeria.
Thank you
very much.
That's all from Segun Awosanya. Up next is our take today. But before then, we'll take a short break on the morning show. Don't go away.